Because of the nature of the static canvas project, this channel has never been a particularly good fit for end-of-year summaries. Even though my last two videos have been about new releases, I'm reluctant to get swept up by the immediacy of games discourse. My goal has always been to provide a perspective on games that is unique to me, predominantly only found with time and care. I'm not interested in chasing trends or insisting my opinion on absolutely everything that comes out. Also, games can be an expensive and time-consuming hobby, and I have to pick wisely. 2021 in particular has been a period in which I've mainly been catching up with games from previous years. Some of them I've talked about on this channel already, others I simply have enjoyed but do not feel compelled to write about. This video is about the ones in between. Not quite enough to fill a full video, but they all have something about them that I feel is worth talking about. These are the games I played in 2021. Something that really impressed me about Metro Exodus was that while it is a notably larger project than its predecessors, that change in scope feels at the behest of its story, not the other way around. The central concept of taking a train across post-Fallout Russia allows the game world to feel much bigger than it actually is. You'll find yourself thundering across great stretches of landscape you can't explore, but nonetheless feel like a part of the world. And rather than one big map, it has a series of still sizable but quite contained ones. Nothing in Metro Exodus feels superfluous. Everything, including the optional side quests, all tie back into the same central goal: prepare yourself for the journey ahead. Making stops to overcome obstacles, to hunt for fuel and supplies, encountering local villains and hazards in the process. It's not a game that feels the same the whole way through. At times it's very Fallout, others it feels more like Time Splitters. There's a touch of Mad Max in there for good measure. It moves so effortlessly between the quiet, slow-burning tension of navigating a poisoned wasteland, to blasting away at cannibals, ghouls and monsters, to calm, intimate moments with the train's crew and passengers. Combining the more linear scripted moments of the previous games with a map design that feels more like a role-playing game than it does an open world, to the effect of, in my mind, being the best of both. Spiritfarer is a very cute game with an unexpectedly somber story. You're tasked with guiding wayward souls to the afterlife, tending after their last rites and helping them to come to terms with their own fate until they are ready to finally move on. Where Spiritfarer stands out is in how it uses its mechanics to effect some really poignant and at times devastating story beats. I don't want to spoil anything, but what I will say is that the central mechanic of taking your passengers to the Everdor, helping them to ascend beyond to the next life, and the tokens they leave behind after, are key to this. It's not a game that you can optimize. You can't swing around the world picking up every wayward soul to create the ultimate afterlife party boat. Their closure is mechanically vital to your own progression, an essential component of upgrading your vessel to branch out further towards the mysterious corners of this world. Your passengers grow tired as time passes, their needs become more complex, the things that haunt them more prominent, and in order to move on yourself, you need to be able to let them go. And sometimes someone's story doesn't quite conclude the way you expect it to. The investments are temporary, the mission broad, and the result is a story about how the most important moments in life are rarely that big or bombastic. The people in your life are not always what you want them to be. Sometimes you don't get the closure you wanted, and sometimes it's okay to just say goodbye for the last time. Alright, so I played A Realm Reborn mostly solo. I completed the main story quests, paired up with an array of generally quite nice and helpful strangers to tackle the dungeons, and then, once I started Heavensward, I sort of fizzled out and stopped. That's not really what I want to talk about here, but it's an important bit of context. I have played what I personally would call a considerable amount of the game, but even then, it's an experience largely unrepresentative of what makes this game so special. Final Fantasy XIV is a strange beast. It's been built around its core loop being accessible to anyone, whether that's friends playing together or someone like me who likes being around others without the pressure of having to interact with them. But its core loop on a mechanical level is, to me, kind of dull, and its story not all that compelling. I hear that it only really hits its stride in the later expansions, that it only goes from strength to strength, but I just found the idea of doing the same things again and again unbearable, and it becomes more and more about what I have been unable to connect with, the one thing where its great appeal lies, the community. Making friends, going on adventures, just hanging out and running dungeons together. The sort of experience MMOs excel at. I tried this, and Lord knows some of my Twitter mutuals were generous with their time, but it's just not my thing, and I wish I'd figured that out 60 hours earlier. I feel like its generosity towards those of us who play solo ends up being somewhat detrimental to what it's trying to achieve. The fact that you never need to talk to another human being means that you might never get why that could be such a joyous aspect of the game. Of course, after all this, for all its accommodations, it could just be a thing that is not for me. And especially now that Endwalker has launched and so many of my friends are waxing lyrical about it, I'm finding myself in the unique position of getting FOMO about a game I've already played. Control is an interesting case in that its world is absolutely fascinating. A weird, wonderful collection of supernatural phenomenon, thrilling set pieces and quirky level design that's all built around an incredibly derivative third-person shooter. You're in the oldest house, a non-Euclidean space full of fucked up objects infested by a supernatural entity known as the Hiss. You've just taken over as the director, which apparently means becoming a superpowered assassin with a shape-shifting gun. How do you combat this foe? Series of gunfights, obviously. Using weapons that might not look like anything you've used before, but they certainly feel like it. You can throw bits of furniture around and control your enemies and eventually disrespect the laws of physics entirely, but it's still just gunfights. It's the same problem the Infamous games had, in that while the wrapping was different, it was still a pistol, a machine gun, a shotgun, a grenade launcher. It doesn't help that under the developers' intended conditions, fights with the Hiss are incredibly arduous. They will take absolute chunks out of you while you plink away at their health like a Boy Scout fighting a bear. It gets repetitive very quickly. I don't want to disparage the craft that has gone into this game because there is a lot to like about Control. I did absolutely rinse the game and the 2 expansions. On occasion, it escapes momentarily from this constricted language set, moments like the side quest that has you playing red light, green light with a haunted traffic light, and the whole Alan Wake bit in the DLC where you need to keep your eyes open for vital light sources. Experiences that use the game world's internal logic to good measure. And there are some interesting puzzles to break up the monotony, but it keeps drawing itself back to this rather unremarkable core gameplay loop. Stick on invincibility, one-shot kills, and enjoy the ride. That's all I'm saying. There's a lot of ambition tucked away in even the smallest of games. You can see the vice-like grip that time, money and manpower has on some projects, the spaces where they could have gone bigger, added more stuff in. Some games, however, are simply content with doing one thing really well. Wide Ocean Big Jacket is one such game. A concise, beautifully written narrative experience following 4 people on a camping trip that's not interested in shocking revelation or salacious drama, but instead offers a look at the difficulties different folk have with relationships, and how sometimes choices have to be made about what you value more in life. It's not dark nor aggressive. Mechanically, it's pleasingly plodding and serene. You do a bit of unpacking the car, a bit of exploring, a few hikes, a few uncomfortable conversations about the impossible divide between 2 people's needs and wants, a reconciliation towards the climax where you realise there are no right answers and you do actually really love the other person and maybe that's all that really matters, and then it ends, just exactly when it needs to. You pack up the car and go home. I can't think of a better game to spend your time with. I did actually play some new games this year, so let me talk about some of them briefly. Monster Hunter Rise I enjoyed a lot. More of the same things I liked about World, but with a faster turnaround on hunts, appropriate for the handheld nature of the Switch, and something I appreciated being considerably more time poor this year. Good dog content too. Bravely Default 2 is a grand JRPG that does absolutely nothing new, but that's okay because the combat is great, the asterisk system keeps things interesting, and the music is wonderful. Fun regional accents too. Deathloop I've played all of an hour of, and I'm incredibly clumsy bastard at it, but it seems interesting, subverts a lot of my expectations as a Dishonored fan. Really nice dynamic between the main characters, and full of breadcrumbs to keep you going even when you're getting your ass kicked. Toem is a really cute photography game that apes the style and tone of detail-heavy picture books. It's all about finding little oddities within these lovely black and white papercraft environments, paying attention to what's going on around you. Really worth your time. And that's it for 2021. This is my 5th year running the channel. I've seen a lot of growth recently and wanted to say a big thank you to everyone for your continued support, especially those of you who came on board specifically because of my surprisingly popular Disgaea video. I'm sorry I haven't really covered anything similar since. As I said in my recent community post, I am constantly evaluating the kinds of projects I want to work on, leaning towards covering broader subjects rather than specific games, and I'd like to make videos more accessible by avoiding too many spoiler-heavy anecdotes in the future. But above all, I remain committed to the core ideal that I want to present you in my own voice, something you can't find anywhere else. With that in mind, here's a little preview of what's to come in 2022. Some of these games I will be talking about. Others are red herrings. Try to guess which ones are which. Happy New Year.